Welcome to our latest explainer. Today, we're diving into the life of a guy often called the father of the digital revolution, a total design perfectionist, an absolute master of innovation. We are, of course, talking about Steve Jobs. But did you know this brilliant tech leader also helped create the very first Toy Story movie? His creative vision is literally all around us today.
So, here's the real question. How did one troublesome student end up changing the entire world? This isn't just your standard history lesson. It's the dramatic story of a rule breaker who didn't quite fit the system, but used his intense curiosity to become an absolute icon.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, a troublesome visionary. Then, changing the world, followed by the Triumphant Return, and we'll wrap up with a quick summary and takeaway. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. A troublesome visionary. Let's look at his early life and education, which might actually surprise you.
You hear the word visionary thrown around a lot, right? It basically means someone who has brilliantly creative ideas about what the future will look like. Jobs could imagine a world completely full of personal computers and smartphones way before they even existed, and he dedicated his life to building that exact future.
But you know that massive vision started out pretty small. Born in San Francisco back in 1955, Jobs was adopted by Paul, a mechanic who taught Steve all about electronics by taking apart and rebuilding radios and TVs. His mother, Clara, taught him to read before he even started school. Then, in 1969, a major milestone hit. He met his high school buddy, Steve Wozniak, who went by Woz.
Now, here's the surprising part. Jobs wasn't exactly a perfect student. Actually, he grew so bored with traditional lessons that he spent a ton of his time playing pranks and causing trouble. Sitting still in a normal classroom just wasn't his thing.
After high school, he heads off to college in Oregon, but actually drops out after just 6 months. Instead of stopping his education, though, he started dropping in on free creative classes. One of those was calligraphy, which is the art of producing beautiful, decorative handwriting. Years later, Jobs revealed that this single, random art class is what inspired the beautifully clean fonts we all use on Apple computers today.
All right, part 2, changing the world. This is where his wild experiences turn into a massive tech revolution.
Before starting his massive company, Jobs didn't have much money at all. He was literally sleeping on the floors of his friends' rooms. But he spent those next few years collecting some highly unique experiences. He worked at the video game company Atari, traveled all the way across India, and even became a Zen Buddhist. He was just out there, exploring the world.
And then, the magic happens. In 1976, Jobs and Wozniak formed the Apple Computer Company right inside his parents' garage. Woz built the Apple I, and Jobs' vision eventually drove the creation of the legendary Macintosh computer in 1984. But then, just 1 year later, total disaster struck. After some really intense clashes with company executives, Steve Jobs was fired.
Think about that for a second. The father of the digital revolution gets fired from Apple. It is a massive, dramatic turning point. Imagine starting a company in your garage, building it up to change the world, and then getting kicked out of your own creation. For sure, most people would have just quit forever right then and there.
But he didn't. That brings us to part 3, the triumphant return. Because how do you recover from such a massive public failure?
Well, Jobs engineered an absolutely incredible comeback. First, he starts a brand new computer business called Next Inc. Second, he buys the movie studio Pixar and actually owned it through the release of the massive smash hit Toy Story. And finally, he makes his return to save Apple. Over a decade away, he was secretly designing the very tools that would eventually save his former company. While at Next, his team was basically building the future. They created NextMail, which was the very first system that let users share voice, pictures, and video directly inside an email. And in 1996, they released WebObjects. That's a software program Apple would actually use later on to run the Apple Store and iTunes. He was literally building Apple's future from the outside.
Meanwhile, Apple was struggling really badly, and they finally realized they needed Jobs back. So in 1996, Apple paid a staggering $427 million to buy Next. I mean, that is an unbelievable sum of money. But more importantly, it officially brought Steve Jobs back home.
Once he returned, he led the creation of the devices we all know and love, the iMac, the iPod, and of course, the iPhone. He made the company profitable again.
For those who might not know, that just means Apple was finally making money instead of losing it. And he remained this brilliantly creative force right up until his death in 2011.
Part 4. Summary and Takeaway. Let's distill all this incredible history into what really matters for us.
Here are 3 big lessons we can take from his life. First, curiosity leads to great ideas. Just like that random calligraphy class, always follow your curiosity. Second, failure is really just a stepping stone. Getting fired actually gave him the push he needed to build Next and Pixar. And third, true visionaries never stop creating. No matter what obstacles popped up, Jobs just kept building.
The absolute biggest takeaway here is that anyone can change the world if they just never stop exploring. So, what will your vision for the future be? Whether you're a straight-A student or a total rule breaker, your unique mind is powerful. Keep learning, stay curious, and thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.